Welcome to Interior Analysis. I'm Evan Westman,
I'm Jelani T. Kelly.
And I'm Angel Michele.
and today we are talking about Split, 2017 return of M. Night Shyamalan. So we'd all seen this before, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you guys go through? Let's start with Angel. What was your initial reaction, and then revisiting? How'd you feel about it?
So I don't remember when I first saw this. I know for sure that I knew the nature of, like, the very end twist, because this movie's got, like, three twists, but so do a couple of M. Night Shyamalan movies, so I feel like that's fine. But, like, the Unbreakable twist specifically, I knew about that before I saw this, so I went in knowing that and kind of looking for it. I kind of had that, like, I feel like that altered my expectations of it a little bit. And it wound up, I think I wound up being more surprised by how good it was just being its own self contained movie. It's just a solid, like, thriller, very good performances all around, like, from pretty much everyone who's, like, a main player in it, which is really only, like, four people, I
I think M. Night
guess.
Shyamalan's cameo character was the best one, though, because
Because he went to Hooters.
he went to Hooters and reheated the
Based
wings.
God.
He did. It's pretty great. I also low key kind of love that he cameos in like every one of his movies. I always look for him in pretty much every one of these, and it's always funny, and I don't know why. Like this one was not as funny as the one in like Glass, for example. Like I thought that was hilarious just because the nature of that character. And I'm
Where does he
wondering it.
class?
So in Glass, he has the most awkward line in the movie where I think it's when we first see Bruce Willis again.
Was he not the one to drop Anya Taylor Joy off at the hospital or whatever?
I don't think so.
Maybe not. I don't remember that movie at all. I don't know
I
what I'm
don't
trying to
either. I haven't
guess.
seen it since the theater. I watched the Honest trailer again today to like refresh my memory, and it didn't. I don't remember like almost anything from that.
You don't have to watch it again. It's okay. It's not very good.
The only reason I would is for more James McAvoy being 12 people. Like
There's not enough of it though. There's not
there
enough of
isn't
it.
in
That's the,
this. And there, but I think there's at least like different personalities. I know there's like a few times he like pops off
We get
in
like 7 of
Glass.
23 in this.
yeah. For this too, there's really only a couple of them that matter. We kind of have like the main three that we see a lot, and then we've got, and I think that those actually work really well as far as like characters and like showing these different performances. Like I really enjoyed all of those. It's when you get into the other ones where this kind of like starts to miss for me, because then it starts to feel a little gimmicky. Because it's kind of like, well, just what other character can we add here? And I feel like Glass dives into that way more, which is probably part of why I didn't like it so much,
See, I
among a
kind of
lot of other
wish
things.
they were a little bit more like if there's like if all the trailers are going to say he has 23 personalities, let's see more than 11 of them, and five of them are only a few seconds. Like
I
I
don't
kind of
even think it
wanted
was
it
that
just a
much.
scene with all 23.
I just counted. It's not even that much. I think it's less than
No,
10.
I think it's
It,
like seven, maybe eight.
the main three.
And there's the
Well,
one
okay.
scene where he's changing like five different times.
Yeah, but most of those are characters we already kind of saw before. So it's
There's a couple new ones though.
Dennis, Patricia, Hedwig, the Beast,
Hmm.
um, Barry, Orwell, and Jade.
And then I think there's like two more that show up in that little like him just freaking out moment.
No, because they say their names, and it's only Orwell that shows up there, and Jade that shows up there, and Barry. Those
Which one is
three.
Orwell?
He was talking about like history or something,
Oh,
or
okay,
books,
gotcha.
history and books. I don't know. There's
Okay,
something big brained.
yeah, no, I know who you're talking about.
I do wish we got more though, because I remember when this came out because I was like senior year of high school. It was like it was I think it was I know it was a January movie. I remember seeing the ads for it, and some girl in my class was like, "I'm so sick of seeing ads for this split." Like, I get it that he has 23 personalities. Like, if you're going to tease it to the point that people have that reaction, then give us more than eight. Like, even if it's just in that little montage thing, I'd be fine to just see like James McAvoy's like audition. Just use that.
I
Like,
really want to know what his audition. I don't know. Did he even have to audition? Because there's some people who just offer only. So I don't know.
I feel like maybe James McAvoy's there now, but I don't know about 2017.
I mean, he was known, but I think this like elevated him to like, whoa, James McAvoy.
Well, this was his whoa moment.
Was he Professor X yet?
Oh yeah, he'd been Professor X for a while, but that's also like a very specific role. Like a role like this is the kind of role I feel like that elevates you enough to the point where you can be like they're like, oh well, you can kind of act in anything type deal, right?
Right.
Like this shows range, it shows a lot of emotion, which like the Professor X role kind of did, but not in the same way. Like he just did a really good like young version of that character that was like really interesting and different from what I think people initially thought he would be, right?
I
Also,
love it as
Anya's-
Professor X.
I think this was
Oh yeah,
Anya's
he's great.
big break.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first thing I saw her in.
It was the first thing I saw her in too, and I remember thinking like,
Mhm.
okay, I want to see her more and stuff. And she's blown up a lot since this, which I'm glad about because I think she's a really solid actor.
Yeah. I think she said she didn't start blowing up till quarantine, actually.
Well, yeah, Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit.
But this was like the thing that because
This was the other thing.
This
Mhm.
movie, and like she wasn't at the point where you could sell it on her name, but like after that, she started getting like Queen's Gambit, New Mutants. Oh, I guess we have two X-Men actors in this, don't we?
Oh yeah, New Mutants. I forgot about New Mutants.
So did everyone else. I
Yeah, I
think.
didn't want to remember it.
But yeah, now she's like a really small part in Doom.
The Menu.
The Menu.
The Menu. Oh my god. Yeah, she was.
That
oh my
also
god,
had
the
another
Menu,
X-Men actor, Nicholas
I
Hoult.
love the Menu so much.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Menu's great. I don't know if this matters. I think that's one of our best episodes. If I had to make a top 10, I think the Menu's in our top 10 best episodes.
Yeah, it was such a good movie too.
It's
Like on
it's
top
so
of it.
ripe for discussion.
I love that movie. I wish I'd been there for that. That's just, oh man. I could that's one of those I could watch over and over again. And it's one of the few movies where I found I can listen to the score like by itself. Like there's a few, like Gladiator's one where the score is good enough where I can like kind of listen to it on its own in some capacities like for writing and stuff like that, but the Menu has a really good score. Like very underrated.
I'm looking it up. I'm seeing that Joaquin Phoenix is the only other name that I'm seeing who is considered to play Kevin. That makes sense that he was like,
Yeah.
he does feel like another actor who would be.
That tracks. Yeah.
I think I'm glad it's not him, but I can see like that scans. I would have probably put his name on the list too if I was casting.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, I'd be curious who else was considered.
I saw this only once when it came out in theaters. I think my two roommates sophomore year recommended it, and I saw it with my other roommate who hadn't seen it. One of the first horror movies I saw in theaters along with Get Out. Only my second time watching. Even though I knew what would happen and who would die, it was still exciting because I forgot most of what happens in between. I remembered the intro and I remembered the end, but I forgot everything else. So, and my last note for initials, I lived in Philly for 4 years. This movie takes place in Philly.
It is an M. Night movie. Every M. Night movie takes place in Philly.
Never went to the zoo, though.
Including Last Airbender.
Yes, including Last Airbender, including After
You know
Earth,
what?
including probably The Village.
It would be really funny if Old took place in Philly, because I don't know how that would even remotely be possible.
The Schuylkill River. It makes you old.
It'll do a lot more to you than that.
It's that part of Philly where there's just people vacationing from different parts of the world.
There is a guy who lives at the disc golf course that I play at who a couple weeks ago was saying, man, if the Phillies lose, I'm going to jump in the river. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you do that. So they've lost, and I haven't seen him since then. You might have done it.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's really concerning.
I don't know.
I asked Dan what is so dangerous about the river. I thought it was like the toxicity of it, because God knows how many dead bodies there are in it. But he said it's the current, like the undercurrent or something. Like people would get trapped
moves
in the
a bit.
current.
It moves.
like there's pockets where you can't like it's moving too fast where you can't like swim up or whatever. And I'm like, that's the lamest way a river can kill you.
No,
Why is it? I thought it was
That's
like
pretty scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
scary, but like I thought it'd be like radiation, like you dip your toe in and your toe comes out a different color or something. Like
I mean, I'm
It's
sure
not
there's
Gotham.
that in there too, but it's not Gotham. But I don't know, Angel. I don't know how much time you spend in Philly, but I would guess it's less than both of us.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, definitely significantly less. I feel like I've only been to Philly like maybe twice,
that's
and I don't even
fine.
remember why.
You're good.
Oh,
You
I
don't need
definitely
any
went
more.
to visit colleges. I know that.
Yeah, you don't need any more Philly.
If you're done with your initials, then that can lead into mine because I actually felt pretty similar to you on this rewatch, Jelani, of like because I saw this a little after it came out. I got it. I think it might be the last thing I got out of a red box. I was visiting my dad because he was living like away from home at the time. He was geobaching, and that weekend, me, and my brother, we got Ex Machina and Split out of Redbox, and I hadn't seen it since then. And I also realized, like, oh wow, I forgot almost everything. I remembered a few things. I remembered like performance moments. I basically remembered who died in the beginning, but I'd forgotten almost everything else in between. So I was actually kind of like I had enough amnesia with it that I was actually kind of engaged with like I don't know what's gonna happen next.
That's how I like approaching. This has nothing to do with it really. That's how I like approaching my rewrites and edits. Like I let enough time pass in between that I forgot everything. So when I reread my old work, it's just like, oh, I forgot I had this in here. It just
Who wrote this? It wasn't
yeah.
me.
I don't.
He must be a really smart guy.
My least favorite part about the writing process is the editing. So that I'm writing or rewriting all of book 3 right now, and I had to go back through my old manuscript, and I'm with this from like 5 years ago, and I'm rereading the stuff I had, and I was like, this makes no sense as to why I had it this way. I don't even remember this happening. Why did I plan this out this way? A lot of fun. Anyway, Split.
Yeah. So my only initial aside from that is that in the years since seeing this, I've like come into proximity. I don't want to say it's like close to me personally because that just feels wrong and inaccurate, but like I have just come into proximity of a lot of elements in this movie. I
Like
also
kidnapping
have-
people?
What is it?
Like kidnapping people?
We don't have to talk about that part.
A little shady, buddy.
But I've also lived in Philly for off and on for like the past 7 years, and there's a couple spots like there's one spot that I recognize really, actually two, nope, three. 30th Street Station is I don't know why he goes there to like buy the flowers, but that's where he goes. That is 30th Street Station.
I didn't even recognize it. I feel like there's a whole other half of 30th Street Station I just haven't seen,
It's not like that big.
but it looks big. And there's like, where do the people go when there's like a long line for Amtrak? Like, what is the underneath of 30th look like? I've never seen any of that either.
Well,
Anyway.
they show it. He goes there. He goes down to the Amtrak tracks at the. I don't know if I was like just not paying attention because I was like, oh, 30th Street. I know that. I don't get why he does that. He like buys the flowers and leaves them, and then runs back to the zoo.
Barefoot.
Barefoot, yes. And I know how long that walk is because the other thing is up until about 2 months ago, I was living like as close to the Philly Zoo as it's possible to live. There's a gate that he walks out of when he goes
You lived
to
in the zoo?
Mm-hmm.
I lived right next to it.
Oh, okay. Be better if you lived in the zoo.
I don't know. I don't know that I've actually. I think I went to that zoo when I was like really little. I have never been to it.
Even
since
though you
living
lived
there.
next to it?
I've walked by it like hundreds of times. I don't think I've ever actually. I don't have to think of. I know I've never been in since moving there. I have never gone in.
Put
But
this
What
on
is it?
Instagram, Angel. What? You've just looked at the zoo but never You lived
The
right
zoo?
next
Stared at
to
it
the.
from afar.
The zoo is a
No, this is
landmark
plausible
that I-
deniability. That's where he brings all the kidnapped victims. So
Okay.
he can't. Yeah.
I don't even know what a zoo is. That's you.
The zoo is what I walk by, or I don't anymore because I don't live in that part of the city now. But the only way I interacted with the zoo was by walking past it on my way to and from disc golf.
You never went in? Like, you're
No.
not curious as to.
I know
Even
there's
I would
animals.
explore that at some point. Like,
Yeah, there are animals.
you know what?
in there.
Today I'm.
That's why
I'm
zoos
finally-
are great.
Why did you choose to live next to it if you were never gonna go inside?
It wasn't about
Like
living
how
next
you're like
to
he
the zoo.
chose the location specifically because
Right.
there was a zoo right there.
I wasn't like, of all the places in Philly, I really like that zoo that I've never been in.
I'm gonna live next to City Hall, but I'm never gonna like go through it or around it or
Okay,
attend
but
any
going
of the
through
events.
City Hall is free. Going to the zoo costs. That's why I
$20,
never go.
right?
I don't know. More money than I want to
You
spend
never
on
checked the
looking at-
prices, Evan.
No, I
Evan.
didn't. I don't like...
Evan doesn't
zoos
like
don't do
animals.
anything for me.
Evan doesn't like animals or
This
zoos.
is all part of his bigotry story.
Go ahead and cancel me.
Oh no, this is one of the personalities. This is not Evan. Who are we speaking to?
There's no personality of me that's been to the Philly zoo.
Is this Nave? Is this Nave we're speaking to?
Not going to answer that. Anyway, the other things the other proximities to this movie that I have, one of my very few celebrity stories is that I have served M. Night Shyamalan at a restaurant that I worked at a couple years ago.
I think you told me about that.
That's so cool.
I'll just tell. It's not very long, but I'll tell the whole story of it. It was like, so I worked at this Mexican place that has since gone out of business. It's called Distrito for those who care.
Okay.
You went into it once. It has like I wouldn't call it a Tex-Mex place, but it's somewhat classy Mexican food. And one night, one of the chefs tells me and like one of my other coworkers, like, hey, we've got like a special guest coming in. They're gonna block off like the whole top of the restaurant, and like it's gonna be private for him. And I forget, someone else told me it's Shyamalan. I was like, holy shit, it's M. Night Shyamalan's coming in. And me and my other coworker were like, wait, did you hear? He's coming in. And we were like, okay, well, what are we gonna say if like he talks to us? Like, probably a couple of his movies we maybe shouldn't mention, but like, what are we gonna do?
So you immediately mentioned Lady
So-
in the Water.
Or he immediately plops the food down on the table and it spills, and he's just like, okay, so what were you thinking with The Last Airbender?
You ruined my childhood.
He's like, this isn't even what I ordered.
Soka.
No, I want to...
So anyway, what actually happened was somebody else served him and like put the food down, but he was sitting like right next to. I was a food runner, and he was sitting like right next to the like line where all the food came up. And at one point, I'm walking by, he's like, "Hey, buddy, can I get a fork?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll get you a fork." So I went and got him a fork. And then my coworker who I had talked to before like saw me do it, and she was like, "Holy shit!" And that was the end of the story.
Should have given him a spoon and been like, "What a twist!" and then ran away.
That would have been hilarious.
Oh, now I'm so mad I didn't do that. It would have
would've
been
been
so fun.
hilarious.
He probably gets that a lot, though. When he, like, that might have been kind of...
It feels like
tired
something
for
that
him.
he would laugh at anyway.
Yeah.
I really wish I'd done that now. Damn it.
That's hilarious.
The only other proximity I have is that the one movie I've worked on in Philly doesn't star, but there was an actor in that movie who was also in this. Apparently he plays the taxi driver. I didn't see him or recognize him, but I saw it on the cast list. I assume it's at the end when Casey gets in the taxi.
Yeah, I'd say probably, yeah, but I don't
I
know
thought she
who
was
that
in a
is.
cop car. I thought she was getting out of the cop car. Or that was a taxi?
Wait, no, because doesn't the doctor lady get out of a taxi?
Yes, she does.
Okay,
And the
so
guy
maybe it's
yells
that.
out of the taxi, "It's closed, what are you doing?" or something
Yes.
like that. So that
Yeah.
guy. It's gotta be that guy.
I don't remember
I guess it
his
must be that
face
guy.
or seeing it.
but I have
He
no
has a
idea who
s-
that guy is.
Yeah.
His name is Peter Patricios. I don't know if I'm saying
Peter
that right.
Parker?
Maybe. I mean, that could be one of his personalities. We don't know. He has a slightly bigger role in the movie I worked on, but 2 degrees of separation. Or 1, depending on which story we want to tell. Degrees of separation from me to this movie are very close.
Can you imagine meeting him again and then genuinely asking him, hey, you remember when I got you that fork?
I feel like I might do that at some point. Like,
The
I mean,
twist
not,
is that he does. He remembers that exactly. That's his fondest memory from Philly.
I mean, if I do meet him again, he's like, "Hey, nice to meet you." I'll just be like, "We've met before, actually."
I wonder how often celebrities get that.
Well, at some point, I also had a very brief interaction with Mark Wahlberg in a restaurant, and I'll tell that whenever we do a Mark Wahlberg story or movie,
The Last Night.
or The Happening.
Oh
which
boy.
has both.
Both feel
Shyamalan and
both feel like I will enjoy talking about them, but will hate watching them.
I've never seen The Happening, so
I haven't either.
yeah. Whenever we do a Mark Wahlberg movie, I'll tell that story. It's also very short.
The Other Guys.
Um,
The Other Guys is a good Mark Wahlberg movie.
The Other Guys is a fun Mark Wahlberg movie. Anyway, let's get into the topics here because we have a few of them. So I want to start with writing a movie around a performance. So Jelani, did you want to lead this?
All right. I stole this topic from Evan. Thanks, Evan. I was kind of actually passionate about this topic when Evan wrote it because you guys probably know I'm an actor. So watching his performance and it being believable, along with, as we've mentioned, and I'll mention her at the end of my notes too, Anya Taylor-Joy, James McAvoy carries the movie. He has to, because he, as a person, character, whatever characters, is the entire premise. I've never really spoken to anybody about their thoughts on his performance, so I'm curious whether this works for you guys. Obviously it does for me.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely worked for me. The part that works the best is honestly the transitions between the characters. Like, there's only a couple of points where you see him changing between personalities, but from what I understand, like that, the shift, like you can feel him. Like, there's one scene that I love, the one where he stops, like, technically he's not shifting between personalities, but he stops pretending to be Barry and he reveals that he's Dennis, and you see his entire body language shift. And obviously, like, McAvoy's putting in the performance of being Barry and not just like making it obvious that he is Dennis pretending to be Barry. So you see that full shift that he'd have, and it's incredible.
That's
I
such
love
a
that scene.
difficult
It's just
thing
so
to pull off.
it's such a much harder thing to do than you'd think, because you get yourself into the headspace of this one thing. I mean, I'm not an actor, but from what I understand, it's like you get yourself into this one headspace, and you kind of feel that, and especially when you're feeling it as hard as McAvoy clearly is in those scenes, and then to have to like completely change everything about yourself. Like, I think I was watching a video where they're like, one thing is like his jawline actually shifts, so it's almost like his facial features themselves are changing, the way he's sitting, the way his head like looks down, to literally the tension in like every one of his muscles. It's insane, just like that level of it. And not just that, but too, like, every one of them, he gives it his all, even if he doesn't need to be like super over the top. Like, I feel like Patricia especially is not the most over the top personality, but she's still so incredibly distinct from every other one that we see. And she has like such a specific personality compared to the others too, which all of them do. I think that's what works so well about it, is like letting each one be unique, but also like knowing that you don't need to overplay it. You can go with very little like subtle nuances. Like Hedwig's an example. He's very over the top, but he also has little subtle things, like the way he sits, the way he smiles, the way he kind of like moves his head when he's nervous, like little things like that. So like for me, that's honestly like the reason to watch this movie, is just the performance and like the like 8 performances that he's doing.
I second basically everything you said there. Like that scene where he transitions from like Dennis pretending to be Barry to like slowly becoming fully Dennis. I remember the first time watching it, my dad at the end of that was just like, "Oh man, this guy's great," and I was like, "Yeah." I was with him. Like I rewatched that scene earlier today, and you can see like the transitioning of like, oh, he's Barry, and then okay, we see a little bit more as like the doctor keeps talking to him, and you can see him like still trying to keep up with the Barry facade, but you can tell she's like really like speaking to him, and he wants to be. At first he's like, no, I got to keep the Barry facade up, and then no, I think I kind of want to. Yep, I'm gonna just now I'm Dennis, and you
It
see
ends with the eyebrow raise.
I don't understand it, but it's fantastic. Like that's one of the best pieces. Like, and he's not saying anything. It's all his face. Like it's just. I think it cuts back and forth maybe like 3 times. I had remembered it as like just one long push, and it's actually a couple. But even within that, like the editing is not cheating his performance there. It's still like I'm gonna transition from here to here in this one, and then like you still get the full evolution in his face.
Yeah.
It's not just
Well, it's the whole thing. It stays on his face. That's the thing. Like, there's no cuts. It's not even like shifting around his body, so like he has time for his face to like adjust to it. No, you're just watching him do it. It's so good.
Well, I'm saying even when it does cut, because it does a couple of times, but it doesn't. It's not hiding his. It's not like a Band-Aid on his performance, because that's something like I've worked a little bit with in editing. Is sometimes you get an actor who doesn't give a good performance or like can't really do line readings very well, and you just kind of got to work with what you have and like can make someone look passable through editing. And I was kind of on the lookout for some of that this time, not because I think James McAvoy is bad, but I was trying to see like how much are they like really holding on him, like trying to show us that they're not cheating with editing. Because I think that's like a subtle thing that even if you're not looking for it can come through a little bit. They seem to be pretty good about like, nope, we're gonna like show you his performance. Like that part where he's transitioning through like 5 different people in the space of like 45 seconds. I'm pretty sure most of that is one take, and it's just we're gonna let James McAvoy act here. And I want to like second your point also about the smaller things. Like a lesser actor, I think, in this role would just be, it would come off more like when SNL actors do impressions, where it's like, I'm just going to be this stereotype. Like, I'm going to flip between being a 9-year-old to a stuffy British woman to this like basement dweller internet pervert to Barry, like this like fashion designer guy. And there's a way to do that, like, even just with what's in the script, you could have played that in a much more, like, just over-the-top stereotype way, and he's not doing that. He's, like, giving you enough to sell, like, the archetype thing, like, what they are on paper. But then he's also giving them, like, he's playing them with enough care and nuance that, like, he's not just leaning into it. Like you can feel like their lived in experience. Like Hedwig is not just this 9-year-old kid who likes hot dogs. Like he's not leaning into the 9-year-oldness of it. He's like, who is this guy? Who is this little kid? I'm gonna play them with like respect, kind of.
He probably did, but I'm wondering if he went to work on every single one of the personalities. Because with my coach, there's normally like prep work behind the character. You got a role for movie, television show, whatever. You got prep work for a character that you're going to play. You got to prepare to play that character, break down all of their scenes, their goals, whatnot, etc.
Etc.
So that makes me question, since that obviously came out in the performance where he's not one note, makes me question whether or not he took the time to go through each character as if it was a different role for a different movie type of thing. Like, or not, you know what I mean.
Like if he took each personality and treated them like a different,
Like a person. Yeah. Like a yeah.
I think he must have. Just
Yeah.
looking at just the way that, like, this might seem like a tangent, it's not. So, like, I don't know if you guys have seen Orphan Black, but Tatiana Maslany. So Tatiana Maslany in that show plays clones, and she plays a bunch of them pretty consistently.
Does she play She-Hulk? That actress?
Yeah, she plays She-Hulk. Yeah. But that was like her big role, her big breakout role was like Orphan Black. So it was I think it was like a Canadian British production. But basically, like, she plays clones, so she plays like many of the main characters herself, and they all have completely different personalities, mannerisms, and like, so you kind of see how with those roles, like, everyone carries themselves differently, their voices are different, the way that they talk is very different, like the cadence of how they talk and how they treat things and treat other people, like, it's very different. Like, those are completely different characters. And to me, looking at it, like, there's no way that you could treat that as like different aspects of the same person, because they're literally different people in that show. And I got the same feeling watching that to an extent that I got with a lot of the performances here, right? So even though he is shifting, they felt like completely separate people. Patricia and Hedwig and Dennis, they never felt like they were one person necessarily, just being different people. They felt like completely different characters to me. Like they could have been played by multiple actors, So I think he must have done the work at the very least for like the main three that we see.
Diane Guerrero?
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that. Her last
Yeah,
name.
no, it's Guerrero from Doom Patrol.
She does that in Doom Patrol as well. What is it with split personalities and superpowers? If I had a nickel for every time, I wouldn't have many, but it's weird it happens.
Legion is kind of the same thing, at least in the comics.
Yeah, I haven't seen the show.
The show's different. In the show, I think he mainly has schizophrenia, so it's a little more of like reality differences in perception of reality, and his combining that with his superpowers. But I feel like I think they did an episode of him in X-Men Evolution, and I think that in that one specifically, like, he has different personalities and each of them has a different power or something like that.
It's not an easy thing to do, and that's why it's not done often. Like, you have to find the right actor for it. And
yeah, it's so impressive.
If you don't sell the audience pretty much right off the bat when you switch personalities, it's not going to work. Because they're just going to see, oh, you're just doing a voice. It also helps not only in like facial performance, physical performance, but also wardrobe, how it's shot per character. Like, if the director's on his stuff, like, the director will shoot each character differently as well. I don't remember, even though I just saw it last night, I don't remember if that's the case for this, but I don't know if it actually matters that much here, because McAvoy's killing it. I think, as far as believability goes, I think it definitely helps ground the character that Dennis is the first shown in the light, because you don't know what type of person this kidnapper is. So the personality we first see with Dennis, I 100% would believe would kidnap 3 random girls. Then comes the shock of Patricia being the next personality shown when they think there's a woman in the room. But as we've all stated, it also helps that the personalities shown are really distinct. And I imagine the choice on the distinction between each was a collaboration between Shyamalan and McAvoy. I like how the tension and seriousness of his characters is broken with comedy. Like, each character kind of has a comedic edge to them, just the slightest bit in certain moments. It reminds the audience to breathe. And I remember a lot of the theater audience laughing when, like, the comedy I think works in this movie. I remember the audience laughing when it was intentional. Like, that's why it worked. Especially at the I think you might be pregnant line. I completely forgot about that. And also, I rewinded this, no joke, like 3 or 4 times. Patricia's little tongue bite when she mentioned there being paprika in the sandwich. That was such a good, specific character decision. Like, I don't know whether it's a bad thing to call that improv or not, but that was such a great decision in that to like show that character's like what she sees as wild, like that was just funny.
Well, also, I don't remember that moment, and I now want to go back and look, but
Please do. It's so funny. She's
I'm
like,
gonna have
"Is
to
it
do it
good?
after
It's
because
got paprika in it."
what I do remember from her in that scene is like when she cuts the sandwich wrong and like kind of has a little like moment and like slams the knife. I was like I can picture the person that Patricia is. Like you're seeing James McAvoy, but you know who this is. You can picture like the person that Patricia is, which is nuts. I think is such a cool performance, and just like again, that's a moment where he's not doing it too big. He's not doing like now I'm a monster. It's no I am this stuffy British woman who has a thing about perfection, and like the sandwich has to be cut perfectly. It's like humanizing, which is so great.
The scene where he's switching personality, I know you guys were gushing over the Dennis being buried, transforming back into Dennis scene. But that, I think we also briefly mentioned the scene where he's switching personalities in front of Casey is completely nuts from an acting standpoint. Because that takes some serious, I'm not going to say talent, because I think a lot of acting can be learned. That just takes serious chops to do. I remember there being audible gasps in the theater when that happened, because one, that wasn't shown throughout the rest of the movie, that he would always just transform behind a door or something. But two, being able to switch like that and it still be believable through each transition with characters we'd only seen just before on video, like that's insane.
It's so nuts.
And he didn't get any nominations for this or anything, did he?
I don't think so, but he should have. Yeah.
I mean,
out of those moments too.
You'd never nominate this because it's not Oscar bait, but like, who? I'm gonna look it up. Who won that year? Who was he? Who would he have been up against?
Wasn't Get Out the same year?
I think so. Oh yeah, so Gary Oldman
Yes.
won that year, and Daniel Kaluuya was up.
Wait,
I don't know who
wasn't
else
that
would
the
have
year?
been.
Gary Oldman, was that the year he did The Darkest Hour?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
I still haven't seen it, but like
I've seen like clips of it. I feel like this trumps that fairly easily.
I'm honestly
That could just
struggling
be
to
me.
come up with a more like there are performances that are fantastic. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but this is like again, like you're saying, Jelani. Like there's so much talent and like just expertise on this. Like James McAvoy's acting skills are the spectacle of this movie, and that was part of why I did this topic. I know it's yours, but
No,
part of why I
but
wanted to talk about it was like as good as some
Don't
other
forget where it came
performances
from, Jelani.
are. No, but I'm just saying this is why I picked it is because I can't think of another movie that hinges so much on an actor's performance. Like there's others that are like on a level of being as impressive. Like I think of Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler, or like Rosamund Pike in Gone Girl, as like just two performances that are they're just knocking it out of the park. But there's other stuff in there that like the movie would be worse if you had somebody else in that role, but it'd still be good. Or on the other end of that, like a bad performance that doesn't kill it. Like Daniel Radcliffe in the first few Harry Potter movies is, I give him a pass because he's 12, but it does make those movies worse. And like that is too bad, but it doesn't kill it. Like his performance as the lead role is not so central to the success of that movie. Whereas like, and same with like, again, and even something like Nightcrawler where it's really all about Jake Gyllenhaal, there's enough other interesting things happening with that character and like in the story of that movie that if you got somebody who was just like okay at it, it'd still be a good movie. If you got somebody who was just hamming it up, in like imagine Jim Carrey playing this role in a way, like in a very Jim Carrey way, that's not as good of a movie.
That's just
No.
The Mask.
Maybe. I haven't seen all of The Mask, but it sounds like Jim Carrey is the type of person that I think we think of when you're like, oh, somebody who can go from like play five different types of people. He would just do it too much. He wouldn't do it with that subtlety. And not to say that he's not a good actor. I think he's
No, not at all.
proven, and he's proven he can be subtle too. I actually like.
Oh,
him
I love
better.
Jim Carrey. Yeah, no, he definitely is good. It's just like what he does is different,
Yeah.
and that's okay. It
it's
lends itself to
wrong
a
for
different
this.
performance.
Yeah, and he's an actor who, not that the movie like centers on his performance, but like he can carry it. No pun intended. But like there are actors, and especially like this was more of a thing in the 90s where like the movie is sold on just this actor is in it, you know them, they're gonna be good.
Denzel
Like-
Washington, Will Smith.
Yep.
Or on a more comedic side, like a lot of people will disagree with this, Adam Sandler at least financially can carry a movie, or could in the 90s.
I do like Adam Sandler though. I think that he's got good performances in there. It's just some of the movies aren't quite up there.
Brad
But
Pitt
imagine Adam
is
Sandler
another.
doing this movie. Can't do it.
No.
And like any of those actors, we were joking about it before. Will Smith is a good actor. He couldn't carry this movie.
I don't think he could. Like, he couldn't do Hedwig convincingly, like, not in the same way. His type of charisma is just different. That's the whole thing, too.
Well, he's also. I think he's an unfair pick. I'm sorry I mentioned him like that because he's an actor who like you want to see him play himself. He's not somebody who
Right.
like, and that's part of why I like that James McAvoy is cast here because even before this, he's played a pretty big range of characters. Like he's played villains, he's played heroes, he's been Mr. Tumnus, he's been.
Oh yeah, that's where I first saw.
Mr.
That was my
Tumnus!
first introduction to him, and I didn't realize
Yeah,
until
dude, same. I
years
feel like
later.
that was a lot of people's introduction to him.
I think it was basically ever. I don't know what he was in before that. He might not have been in almost anything. before
Doesn't matter.
That, I
At
think, was
least-
his first big one.
Mhm.
I don't know what else he's been in, though.
Well, yeah, I don't know what he's been in before that. Atonement came out a couple years later. That was like his next big one, but I haven't seen that. I think
Atonement's good.
I imagine it's a very different performance than this, though. Like
Wanted. He was in Wanted.
Wanted.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Wanted's
That-
good.
that was before Chronicles of Narnia, but
No,
I
I
didn't
don't
see
think
that
so.
before.
No,
No?
it
I
wasn't.
think
It was
Wanted
after.
was 08 or 09. Narnia was 05.
Wanted was 08, and then Chronicles was 05.
Oh, you're right.
But yeah, like think about him in that movie versus Narnia versus Professor X versus even he's in his Dark Materials, which I don't think you guys have seen, but like
I have seen some of it, and he's really good in it.
I really like him in that. But like
Yeah.
he's one of a few actors that I just love because like him, Ed Norton is another one, Sean Bean is another, and Jake Gyllenhaal as well. Like I think Christian Bale is another to throw in there too. They've just played such a wide range of characters that like they basically have the freedom to take any role, and they've been. It's not just that they've played a big range of characters. They've been really good as a big range of characters. They've been like psychopathic villains and like straight ahead heroes and just as good as in both of them. Like I love Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler and I love him in Brokeback Mountain. And those are very different characters that he's playing across those two movies. Like
What about Mysterio?
I actually kind of hated him as Mysterio. Not because he's
You're
bad.
wrong.
Not
your
because
opinion
he's
is
bad.
incorrect.
It's not because Jake Gyllenhaal's bad. It's because that role is not good enough for him. That's why.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't know. Nobody's ever in our comments, but if Swifties are in our comments hating on Jake Gyllenhaal, go watch Nightcrawler. I don't know. I don't want to, like, speculate on how he was in that relationship, but go watch Nightcrawler. He's so good.
Nightcrawler.
They
Maybe
dated?
that's how he was in the relationship. Was just Nightcrawler. We don't know. We weren't there.
No, we weren't. I don't know when it happened either. I had a friend make me listen to All Too Well a whole bunch of times, which is about him. But
I don't keep
Yeah, I
up
don't
with
remember when that was.
with
But
celebrity
Nightcrawler also was definitely
relationships.
after that, I think.
I'm not up on my Swift knowledge enough. But I'm sure. Yell at us in the comments. Boost our engagement. Tell us how wrong
Yeah.
we are.
Someone comment something, please.
Comment the entire Taylor Swift history, and we'll get all the Swifties here.
I'll read the whole thing.
I might too. Who knows?
Also, I didn't realize in the second watch just now, Anya Taylor-Joy is also in her acting bag with her performance, so props to her. I completely forgot about the history with the uncle. I had to look up the rating. It's PG-13, but
It's a lot.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
weird.
It's a lot.
I remembered bumping on that the first time and like just being like, "Whoa, this is going a little." And this time I was like, "Yeah." And I've stated my feelings on the MPA. Again, this is like, they don't show anything, but like, why is this okay for 13-year-olds? Like, there
Yeah.
is. I didn't want to like make a note of it. There was way more pedophilia in this movie than I remembered, and I don't think it's handled like distastefully, but it is prominent.
Okay, there's the two
Yeah.
examples. Is there a third? There's the one that happened to Kevin when he was young, where he was assaulted.
Just most of Dennis.
Oh yeah, most of Dennis.
Yeah, because all Dennis's. Yeah, honestly, I think
Oh,
I'd
man.
forgotten about the Dennis stuff. I remembered the Casey stuff. I think I'd forgotten about the Dennis stuff because that's another one that like I was kind of able to track where a lot of these traits came in with some of these characters. That was one where I guess it adds to the character because you're kind of wondering like how that even started.
They explain when the OCD started, and that's when Dennis came. But like,
That made sense.
yeah,
Like it was
and
something
then-
like that. Like they explain where it came from. Like I'm not an expert on DID, but something like that. Although I actually do have OCD, so like I can say that like the way he explained it does make a certain degree of sense for the way for like that man. If I think a lot of it comes from anxiety or like like specific events like that. So like something with that level of trauma like that could very well trigger like the very severe form that he seems to have. As far as the DID stuff, from stuff that I've heard, the way he describes that makes sense as far as like the reason that personality developed, like as a defense mechanism. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not an expert on that aspect of it, so don't necessarily take my word for it. Look up better sources than me. But from what I've heard, that seems like one of the very accurate parts of it.
It seems to be portrayed responsibly to my eyes, and I think
For the
that
most part.
helps. Like, I don't want to say it's again. It seems pretty sensationalized here, but also like the empathy for the character, I think, does a lot. There's another topic I want to like bring that up in, but to relate it to this topic, I think the like history that is built out for this character is like kind of the one writing thing that I think is helping McAvoy's performance. Just giving him stuff to work with. Like it's giving him subtext to play that like Shyamalan has taken the care to write out a history for this character and not just make him this one note like, oh, he's a crazy dude who's gonna like kidnap you and whatever. Like he has a history.
I wish directors and writers did that more. I mean, yes, less work on my part, but like not being given a direction. Like me, I'm very in my head about people and roles I get and play. So I don't know if I'm ever making the right decision when it comes to a character. I mean, I've started to accept and be fine with no news is good news, but I'm also self-critical, like looking back at my performances and being like, why did I make that decision? Why was the director even okay with that? I really do like the fact that Shyamalan did give him something as far as what to go off of in McAvoy's performance, as far as like a backstory for his character, because a lot of the time, and I'm learning as I go, but a lot of the time the directors do not give a damn what type of backstory you gave your character. And also, what? Okay, I need to say this because this was just something I learned in directing for the screen at Drexel, but apparently is not the case in the industry. The directors don't care what type of performance you give most of the time. If they want to give you notes, they will. But as far as like, yeah, as far as like you bringing your best to the thing, to the role, whatever, there's not a whole lot of intimacy or like back and forth usually. From what I hear right now where I am.
That doesn't sound right.
It doesn't. But my aunt has been on a couple of shows, varying degrees of importance as far as the roles go, and she said that that's not the case. Maybe unless you have rapport with the director and you're the lead, obviously I think there. But from what I hear, directors kind of just trust the actors to do whatever. With more particular directors, I can see there being more hands-on-ness, but
Yeah, like David Fincher cares about the performance. I know that.
Yeah, and it's because also his camera movements also are surrounding the performances too. Like so many specific things surround like he gets so specific that yeah, he kind of has to.
yeah, the first thing I learned in directed for screen was make sure your actors are giving it their best. It's a collaborative effort. Bring out the best you can in them, and
Yeah.
I think it's also just the projects that me and my aunt have been on. For example, a commercial I did, the director didn't care. I checked in with him like, "Hey, am I doing all right? Like, I feel like I'm in my head too much. I feel like I'm too stiff." He was like, "Well, how do you feel you're doing?" I was like, "You don't have like any tips or anything?" He was like, "No, doing great."
Do you like the SpaghettiOs you're eating? Good. That's all you need to do.
That's too bad. Like even for because I mean to my eyes, a commercial's a commercial. Like I don't know that
Right.
people like I don't know that people get super creatively invested in it. I haven't really worked on. I've worked on like marketing stuff, but not a commercial in the sense that like not like the kind you did. But even then, you still have a goal in mind for a commercial. I would think
Right.
there would be some kind of notes of just like give it more energy or I don't know, don't blink during this shot or like something. I'm surprised they gave like
I hope I'm not I hope I'm exaggerating just right, because there are notes. There's like, okay, we want you to try this take like a 90s family, but there's no like there's nothing of what I learned as far as what happens with directing, as far as like, okay, let's break down how you feel about this scene, whatever. Obviously it's commercial, so they're not going to get that in depth, but for example, my aunt was on I think it was Blue Bloods, and she was like prepping for a scene. I don't even remember if she spoke to the director directly. He was on like a crane. He said action. She barely heard action, so she just ran down the street for the shot. And he said, okay, great, moving on. So she was giving me notes and tips like, you just have to be ready as far as what you're comfortable in giving as for like a performance. So with like student films and stuff, I think there's been more notes given because they have a very specific idea in mind. But I'll let you guys know if that changes when I start booking films more often.
I mean, I hope it does, because like I also learned that, like, because I learned it from the other side, like the directing side of it, and it's like that doesn't make any sense to me.
It
Like
didn't.
I could see that maybe with like bigger actors, like it might feel weird to tell, let's say like Will Smith what to do, right? Or like Tom Cruise or somebody like that. But they also tend to have like, they tend to have like very creative pull, a lot of creative pull on the projects they work on
yeah,
because
Tom
they're such
Cruise
big names
usually
now.
I think has more creative control than the directors he works with. In a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
cases.
absolutely. Yeah, but
I
like
feel like
so
Will Smith is someone who like not that he doesn't have creative control or clout, but I feel like he would be someone who because like Tom Cruise plays pretty similar characters every time. Will Smith in recent years has at least kind of branched out into trying to do stuff like King Richard or Concussion or stuff like that, where I feel like he would want to work a little more with the director. It seems like there'd be a healthy balance with it. Like I think there is something to be said for like let the actors cook a little bit, like let them bring themselves to their, like even the few like times I've directed stuff, like I love it when an actor can bring something, and if they do like something unexpected that I like, I'm like, okay, yeah, do more of that. I feel like working with actors is the aspect of directing that I work best with. Directing isn't something I do a lot, but when I have, I feel like I gravitate more toward that than like picking shots and like other stuff that's important to it. But I think it's a balance because you don't want to be tyrannical. Like you want to work with them, and like you're saying, Jelani, like from the actor's side, you want notes. You don't necessarily want to just be given free reign. Like there's a collaborative process that goes with it, and I think that can show in a character is like, I don't remember where I've heard this, but I feel like there's something that I've been told in like some class or something that says the actor knows the character better than you do as the writer. Like they spend more time thinking about them specifically. So actually, like, it is good to trust some of their instincts. And you know, there's a balance with that because, you know, there can be a point where that gets to be like a tug of war. But when it's done in good faith, I think you can have a really good collaboration between. I've heard about this with like TV actors, where maybe the first season of a show, you have the character as it is on paper and the actors just kind of playing them as they are on paper. Then you get renewed for a second season and you know the actor you're working with, and you can kind of play to their strengths a little bit more and be like, oh, they're really good at this thing, and we didn't know that when we were writing the first season, so let's like build out that aspect of the character. And I think that can show.
I received a tip from a class that I took from a casting director that said when it comes to a TV show, they want to see more of you than the character. Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with all of the episodes. You're going to be spending a lot of time with the cast and crew. So they really want to get to know you through the character, to see what your take is on the character and all that. And then, you know, later on, like you said, Evan, bring out whatever in later seasons. But when it comes to, I learned when it comes to auditions, do your take, but also like put yourself in that role as much as possible, like your personality or whatever. Yeah, where were we?
I mean, just kind of talking about the acting as it relates to this in general. I think this is all very valuable to it, though, because I think it's part of like what went into this performance. Probably is that like I think you can feel a collaboration. Like I stand by the point that we've all kind of agreed with, that McAvoy carries this movie. Shyamalan is giving him stuff to work with, though. Like it is dependent on him. If he doesn't deliver, this movie doesn't work. Right. But Shyamalan has crafted a character that he can sink his teeth into, and I think that's worth noting. And you know, maybe there's a reason this is one of his later movies in his filmography. Like, if he'd made this like right after The Sixth Sense, he might not have, or especially before The Sixth Sense, would he have had the clout to get a McAvoy caliber actor? Probably not. You know, it still might be a decent movie, but I don't think it would be as good as it is.
How long has he been doing it by the time he did this movie? That's my question. I want to know how many... No, McAvoy. I want to know how many years he had behind him.
Oh.
I mean, probably a lot more than I'm sure there's many years that precede him being in Narnia, so... Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I want to know how much time...
what his ceiling is. Like,
right, I want to know how much time...
His earliest role that I'm seeing here is from 95. So a while.
Okay.
In which he also plays someone named Kevin.
And that... funny. That is not even... Like, that's just what he was booked in. That's not even... And that's what you could find. I'm sure he has... I'm sure there's still stuff before that.
Yeah, he might have been doing stuff like school plays as a kid, which, you know.
That, but also just actors don't have everything on their IMDb. I have 2 things on my IMDb, and One of them was from like 2 years ago that still hasn't come out, and one was a pilot I did. But my resume is like a page long, and none of that is on my IMDb. You looked on IMDb, Angel?
Yeah, for
Oh, I
for
looked on
McAvoy.
Wikipedia actually, but if I look on
Okay.
IMDb, I feel like it'll say something similar.
So yeah, there's things he's probably done before that Kevin role, the first Kevin role, that we haven't seen. So he's been in it for a while. I'm just curious because I want to know how long it'll take me to get to this point. I'm not saying I'd be curious to try it.
I think it'd
But
be fun. Like,
yeah,
it seems like a good exercise at least. Like, I feel like
Mhm.
there is an acting exercise version of this. Like, I most of the acting experience I have is through improv, which is it has very different goals
you gonna
than
mention
like
Switch?
yeah. I mean, I I think I've mentioned this game before on the show, but one of my favorite improv games is called Genres, where you get a
Oh,
list of
genres, not
genres.
Switch, not Switch.
Yeah, and like every 20 minutes, or not 20 minutes, 20 seconds, somebody calls out a different genre and you've got to switch into that. It's really fun.
Right. That's pretty
It
cool.
I love it. It's so much fun. That's a version of like what this is doing, but the amount of skill it takes to do like cuz genres is a game that like plays well with just stereotypes of the genre you're in. Anytime somebody yells out noir, I do a noir voice because it's like a 1940s like detective kind of voice and talk about rain and whiskey and dead wives
And
because
dames.
yeah, you know you got some nerve coming into this police office. Yeah, sonny. Like that's always what I'll do because the point of the game is make everyone recognize the genre. Switch whatever you're doing into that. It's not meant to be like believable. I don't have to transform myself in any other way into a noir detective. I just gotta like play the hits with it, essentially. There's a world of difference between that and James McAvoy embodying 7 completely different people in the span of 45 seconds. Like, that's like if genres is like 5th grade, that's like a master's degree level of doing genres, and he's pulling it off here. I don't think he's the only person who could, but I would love to just see other actors go for that.
I'll spend most of my time on set trying to get into character, and then when we're shooting, I'm not even sure if like, if I even got fully in the character. So I can't imagine switching between characters on a dime in a single take.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean,
And again, like if you're just asked to do like there's stuff in like SNL sketches where they'll get 10 seconds to do an impression of a certain celebrity, and it brings the house down. Everyone loves it when you do a good impression. You're only those impressions tend to only be imitating like the voice and like maybe one mannerism of the celebrity that they're doing. It's like that. I think is maybe like if genres is 5th grade, that's high school maybe, or maybe they're even on the same level. It really pales in comparison to what McAvoy is doing here. I love that. Like I don't feel like it cheapens this movie that it is a little bit of a it came out in January, which fair or not just marks it as kind of a schlockier movie. But like imagine if this kind of performance was in an Oscar movie, he'd clean up. I don't know that we're ever gonna
yeah.
see that because it like the premise of this is well suited to like a horror movie like this and not a prestigious kind of one. But the amount of talent that's on display here is just like insane, and it's never a movie that would get nominated. And they all knew that because it came out in January. Let's move to your topic, Angel. Is the reason he spares Casey satisfying?
I did want to talk about like kind of the ending reveal because obviously I think they did a really good job of setting up sort of the similarities between Casey and Kevin throughout the movie. Like you lay the groundwork well for how these characters can like understand each other, and the setup for like I guess how they relate to each other can kind of work. I think in this particular case, it mostly works, for sure, as far as, like, I get that, like, yes, they've both been through trauma, they've both suffered, so that's essentially, he even says it, like, that's why, to him, she's pure. Like, that is why he decides to spare her, and to him, the other girls, like, kind of had never known pain. And you even see that in the way that Casey interacts with them, like, how she feels like everything is so easy for them because, they don't know the kind of stuff she's been through and, stuff like that. I think as far as the actual moment that it happens, it does kind of feel like a little out of nowhere in the sense that, like, it would have felt more organic had the personalities learned this about her over the course of the film. You know what I mean? Like, if they kind of, like, learned and gotten to know her, or at least one of them. Like, let's say, like, maybe Hedwig, or, Dennis or Patricia, like one of the main ones where they themselves kind of get a sense, like, maybe they grow into sparing her, as opposed to, seeing the scars on her, and then, like, oh, okay, because, like, obviously we have seen all the flashbacks and we know all this stuff, but with him, there's just kind of an assumption.
Yeah, and it's also where I agree with you a lot. I don't disagree with any of it, but especially because he only stops when he sees the scars. It's a physical manifestation. And from what we can tell, like, it's a little vague on the kind of, like, trauma and abuse that Kevin went through, but we don't see scars on him, I don't think.
Yeah, not that I can remember.
So if that was there, like, even if you just literally didn't say anything about it and showed him with scars, that might work, but it seems like his trauma is more mental and emotional. So for him to respond, like, because we know that Casey, like, has, like, more emotional and psychological trauma, the fact that he spares her when he sees physical evidence of it doesn't square quite as well. I think it works in some ways, but I agree with you. Like,
yeah,
maybe it could have come out a different way.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, like, more organically over time, as opposed to sort of, and it wasn't even like a twist thing necessarily, where they're like, oh, this is because, again, they mention it earlier to the point where it's, like, very explicit how they mention it, where he's like, I think Dennis was talking about it with the doctor, where he's like, like, sometimes there's no other way, like, these people have not suffered and we have, and that's basically, he's describing, like, this is why the beast exists and why we're, like, sacrificing these girls to be, like, he explains what the plan is and why they're doing this. So it's not really a twist when that moment happens, but it's almost like it's set up and executed as a twist moment, where it's like, oh, like, you think this is going to happen, and then all of a sudden, like, bam, something happens, and the whole scene pulls a 180. And I definitely do think that it's heavily implied that Kevin also went through a lot of very physical trauma, even if we don't necessarily see the scars. Like, I'm willing to bet that his mom hit him.
I think that's a fair assumption based on what we're shown textually.
Yeah, so, but again, the for me, the physical, like, seeing that physical, it didn't hit emotionally in the same way that I think it would have if he'd gotten to know her over the course of the, over the course of the movie. Because again, we've gotten to know her, but that's not the same as the character, right? So it makes it feel almost like the reasoning the character has for doing all this is a little unbelievable. Even if the beast itself is, as a personality, is sort of a little bit of, like, an over-the-top idea as opposed to an actual character, compared to someone like Dennis or Patricia or Hedwig, which actually feel like very nuanced. Like, the Beast, I can't really get a sense of what its personality is supposed to be,
Angry.
other than, like, this sort
the
of
Hulk.
mythic figure, this sort of mythic villain figure of, like, almost like a monster under your bed type character, right? But other than that, like, it doesn't manifest as anything other than, like, almost a primordial being as opposed to an actual person.
I think that's why it doesn't have a name.
Yeah, and maybe that's the whole point. Like, maybe that's the reason. Like, that was what they needed, and that's what manifested.
But
sort
it
of this
clearly
like
has an ideology. Like, I agree with what you guys are saying. Like, it doesn't have a personality. But Casey is spared because of an ideology that this personality holds. And it seems to be held by Patricia and Dennis as well. So,
yes.
and that's something that also, I don't know that she would have evidence of, because you were saying we get, like, backstory on Casey through the flashbacks, which is information that we are given and Kevin is not. I think the reverse is also true, because Casey doesn't know about Kevin's trauma, like why he has this split personality. That's all stuff that he talks to the therapist about. So they're both actually like missing the information that would connect them. And now that you're mentioning it, I do wonder why there was a choice to not fill each other in on that. They have scenes together, and that doesn't come up, I don't think.
Yeah. The only argument that I could make for that might be that as she's getting to know Hedwig and as she's kind of like, as Casey's sort of like, not even getting to know Dennis and Patricia, but more like analyzing their behavior and understanding from her own perspective as a survivor, like understanding kind of like why they're doing what they're doing, like sort of like, it's almost like she's sort of like, detectiving is not a word, but like understanding through the subtleties in their behavior, kind of like how we're analyzing their performances, right? Like sort of understanding like maybe the reasons why they're doing these things. Like you can see she's very good at reading their personalities very quickly and understanding like what will work and keep the girls from like getting harmed.
Yeah,
You
she's
know,
like
like
changing her
understanding
tactics based on the personality.
exactly.
she's
Like she
interacting
has a
with.
very good sense of like how to sort of like work around and avoid sort of setting them off. You know, so it's very possible that she could have guessed that, yeah, like maybe at the very least, like you can see that Hedwig in a lot of ways is kind of traumatized. Like he's in a not great relationship with the other personalities where they're very clearly like using him, and where he's just like that personality specifically is a scared little kid who is just trying to like be accepted by, these other people that to him like that look down on him, that think he's stupid and all this stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot of that like maybe she can potentially relate to, and a lot of stuff going on with the other characters within, James McAvoy that she could relate to also. I could see that kind of being an argument, but even then, like that is, and luckily for this movie, it's not really a requirement for her to understand. She doesn't reason with him and then get spared, which would then create another problem. In this case, she is not going to be spared, and then he makes the decision like independently of that. Like in order for like what I was saying to work, where it would be like they get to know each other, they would have to get to know each other, because I think there would be a point where she would have to convince him to not murder her or eat her or whatever.
Right.
You know?
Like, what if her trauma was also mental or something, but there was no physical? Would he have just killed her? Like, what if she shouted at him?
Exactly my point.
I have depression.
I think, yeah, that's the impression I get. Like, oh, he would have just eaten her. Like, or she would have had to launch into a whole monologue about her backstory, which I could see happening in an M. Night movie, but not this one, because this one I think is actually written really well, and like for the most part respects the audience's intelligence.
Yeah, and respects, like, you saying, like, the monologue is the other choice. I do agree that, like, if we are going to have textual, like, proof that they understand each other, you do kind of have to have her give a monologue for her backstory. And I like it better that I think the flashbacks are actually pretty good. A lot of times flashbacks can be a bit of a cheap narrative device. I think they're used pretty well here.
Yeah, and the tension in them is built up a lot too, like really well. Like as far
The
as like the
gradual
reveal of like what the
reveal.
uncle is.
But the other thing, even before you get to that, this was something else I was kind of thinking about with this topic, is a lot of those flashbacks show her dad teaching her to hunt and talking about animals and how you interact with them. And she seems to be, like, in the first few scenes, it seems like Casey is taking that kind of like mentality into interacting with Kevin and the
Right.
different
Yeah.
personalities. Is like, I want to get a read on what kind of animal am I working with, and the beast is an animal. So why doesn't that come into it more, where like she understands how to deal with a large, like a predator, essentially like a predator animal on its own terms. That's a skill that she has, and it never really comes in that way. I don't know that that's a better ending, but you had that option, and I don't even think it's a bad thing that it's not explored. But even the way that it's done, the scars are nice and clean. Like, that's an easy visual thing to go to. And it doesn't feel that cheap. Like, I don't hate it. I think it's mostly okay.
No, like if they had built this up and then that had been the moment that fully cemented for the Beast, like, no, I can't, because like it's very clear, like, she wasn't bluffing, she wasn't claiming any of this stuff to try to relate to me. She actually was suffering, right? And I just remember because you were talking about the monologue, there was one moment where she does kind of explain herself a little bit, to Hedwig.
Right.
Because she's like, I
To
get in
get him to
trouble on
show
purpose
the
so that
room.
I can be alone. And I don't know that that's necessarily enough information, but I think that Hedwig, I mean, he's got the personality of a 9-year-old, but he's got enough nuanced understanding of like the stuff that he's scared of and the stuff that's hard for him, that like that was what got him enough to be like, okay, you can come see my room.
Yeah, he's someone that she knows, like, can sympathize. Like, he has the capacity for that, and
Yeah.
I think Casey knows that. I'm wondering if maybe another option could have been, like, if she had confided more deeply in a benevolent personality like Barry, or another one that isn't featured, and then, like, that personality gets overwhelmed by Dennis or the Beast, and so that sympathy is gone, and she
I mean,
tries to play
Kevin.
on
It happened with Kevin.
Yes, but well, wait. You mean like what do you mean?
The only time we see Kevin in the movie, it happened there.
I'm not remembering
he was
it
like,
perfectly, but I think you're right.
he said, it's not so and so 2016.
Oh yeah,
He tells her to get his gun.
clear he's been asleep for like 3 years.
Yeah,
something like that.
Says there's a shotgun I keep in my locker. Shoot me. And then that's overtaken by Patricia. And then she tries to call him again. She was like, he's not. He's asleep.
Okay, yeah. So maybe they do it more than I was. I forgot about that moment or the exact details of it.
The only other stuff I want to talk about with this was it's a good way to like look at sort of again like how you build up certain things, because like it can feel cheap if it feels like you're trying to do a gotcha moment, and the setup itself, like, because this is so character focused, the characters themselves needed to sort of relate to each other that way, and I think that it would have then made more sense. Like, I'm not saying you have to cut out the therapist necessarily, although that aspect of it feels a little more like the less successful M. Night movies, where she's doing a lot of exposition that does make it feel oddly enough like he doesn't respect our intelligence, which other scenes tell us that he does. So it's very weird to think about.
I don't know if I agree with that, because the way she's speaking makes me think he collaborated with a couple of psychologists or something on this.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that it's like it's doing more telling than showing, but I don't think it's empty. I think it's fine exposition that is also like, to your point, Jelani, I do also agree that it feels like there was some collaboration with, like, I think he did his research on this. Mm-hmm. And that does come out in those scenes. And I think that's important for, like, again, just like giving respect to people who have this disorder.
Yeah.
There is an extent to which I think there's an argument to be made that this is sort of sensationalizing the mental illness for horror, which other things have done in less tasteful ways. To my eyes, I don't think this is that distasteful, and I think a lot of that is because we spend the time in those therapy scenes showing that, like, this isn't just some crazy dude. This is a maybe not normal psychological response, but a real one, and like we are given a lot to empathize with for Kevin. And that kind of gets into my other topic, but I'll save the points there.
Well, really quick, I meant more with plot things as opposed to the actual therapy stuff, because I think the actual
okay.
Yeah, no, I meant more with like plot things where it's like there's a lot of her like kind of explaining the history, explaining like to Barry or to Dennis like things that they already know because we don't know them. Like, and that's when
She
it
should have
feels
said,
kind of
"As
like
you know." I think
yeah,
you should have said,
exactly, the
"As
as
you
you
know" or
know
something.
thing, and the sort of like shoehorning in not just information that could have been delivered more organically, but information that we've already learned too. Like stuff that we as the audience know. And it's not like she's even explaining it to another character who doesn't know it. She's explaining it to the person that it's about that has also been through all of this stuff. And some of it works, some of it doesn't. I think as far as like the actual research that went into that, I agree. I do think that for the whole idea of there being like these 23 personalities and some having superpowers feels a little sensationalized. The fact that we get nuanced portrayals of these characters like Patricia and Dennis and Hedwig, I think that that shows that like there is a level of care that went into it that a lot of other depictions of this disorder and other disorders too like don't necessarily give. That like M. Night clearly does care, you know?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The only other thing I wanted to say with this is just like, this isn't a big problem, but I did kind of notice it this time. I am a little bit resistant to like the way that this engages with its theme, because I don't think it's a terrible example of half-assing theme, but there's a way to read this that it's almost saying like trauma good, actually. I think that's a very unfair reading of it, but I am a little bit resistant to the way that like theme is a lower priority for this movie, and that's a bit of like just a heavy subject to deal in as a lower priority. I don't hate it, but I think it's a thematic topic that maybe should be handled with a little more intention, because I think there's a bad faith reading of this that does kind of come off as saying like trauma good, actually.
So if you have trauma, you get superpowers at some point.
Yeah,
Kind of,
I know what you
or,
mean. I think
like-
I've heard that before.
Okay, so I'm gonna start. I'm gonna get cooking on that some more.
I mean,
Nothing happened for me yet, so I'm gonna keep working at that.
I mean, there is certainly a precedent for that in superhero origins. So,
Yes.
I don't want to like totally like dismiss how this movie does. Again, I think there's a lot of respect that's put into it. I think like the trauma that these characters have been through is treated with respect. And again, the Beast is the bad guy. I don't think the movie is adopting that ideology, but it is still like just the fact that Casey survives because she's been through trauma. There is a way to read that.
Trauma might save your life one day.
Yeah. I don't think this movie
like
is
Sansa.
actively. Maybe.
I don't like that character. That's
Yeah.
another topic.
Just to point to something else, this is theoretical, but, and I won't send us off on a tangent with this, I hope, but Beyond the Spider-Verse is actually something that I think is primed to engage with this topic very intentionally. I won't say too much more on that because of like just spoilers for Across the Spider-Verse, but it seems like I hope we get something that dives into it. And I think I'm sure there's other stuff that does it that I maybe haven't seen or just am not thinking of.
Kevin's childhood traumas were all canon events.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of just a read I've seen on canon events, and like, I only bring that up because I think it's just another way that this theme has been handled in a little bit more, like, with more intention. Because the thing I talk about with like half-assing theme is that it's usually in cases where theme is a lower priority, and you can tell, and I think that holds true here. Like, this movie was not made to be a thematic conversation about trauma.
No, it's about the 23 personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, and I'm not saying Shyamalan did a terrible job of it, but that's kind of a thing that I stand by from, like, the video I made about half-assing theme is, like, if theme's not your priority, that's okay. be careful about the topic you pick, though, because
Am I like old?
Hmm?
I'm sorry. I'm. God. Yeah. I'm saying you might like old because I don't think that half-asses it.
okay, I haven't tried it, so maybe. I want to look into other Shyamalans because I've actually only seen the Unbreakable trilogy and Unbreakable trilogy, Sixth Sense, and Last Airbender.
I haven't seen Sixth Sense.
You gotta watch Signs.
Yeah, I've heard he's hit and miss, and sometimes the misses are bigger. Sometimes it kind of depends on your taste.
Wasn't this his first movie after Last Airbender?
No, After Earth is between those, but I think it might be the only one.
And The
No.
Visit. And The Visit
Okay.
also.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know how The Visit was received, but I think this was the start of a comeback for him.
I think The Visit was well received, but I think this is the
Okay.
big comeback.
Because people were not happy with his run of I think like The Happening, Lady in the Water, Last Airbender, After Earth.
Yeah.
It was man, he's kind of fallen off here. And then Split was like, all right, maybe he's back. Maybe he's all right. I just wanted to bring that up as just part of that topic. My topic for this, if we're ready to move into that, is
9 minutes.
how Split builds on Psycho. So Psycho's a movie we've talked about. This topic will spoil it if you haven't seen it, but it's kind of the prime example of a character with multiple personalities. But in Psycho, it doesn't tell you until the end that the character has two personalities, and it kind of takes its time at the end explaining that concept to the audience. So I like that Split brings us in with the assumption that we all kind of know what that is. We know that multiple personalities is just a thing, either in real life or in fiction. It knows we've probably seen Psycho, or at the very least, we've seen Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. So,
Raimi mentioned.
I know, and I knew when I wrote that note that I was like, all right, we're doing it again.
Every episode.
Check our box. I mentioned it just because we don't have to have split personality explained to us. Let's run with that. Also, we can make it more than 2 people in there. We can make it, even if it's only going to be 5, we'll turn up the volume on it a lot. I like that also, it learned some lessons from what Psycho does. And like we've mentioned, I think there's a lot to be said about the respect that's given to Kevin and to all the personalities. It's not just portraying it as, in Psycho, it's oh, wow, he's crazy because he has the mother personality, is kind of the undertone at the end. And I think this does a good job of it can still have that be the source of the horror, but as I was watching it this time, I was oh, I'm kind of rooting for Kevin. I know how the movie's going to end, but I want him to have a healthier response to this, and I think it does a good job of making you feel like that's possible. It shows you Barry and Hedwig and shows that this guy is okay, and we get indications through dialogue that he's good at his job, and he's gone several years without having an incident. There's a good chance that he can turn out to be a healthier and pretty well functioning person.
And even if it wasn't Kevin, I get the feeling that we see the 3 worst personalities. He would be functioning somewhat if there were any of the other personalities in charge, even the non-mentioned ones. I feel like we're seeing the worst Kevin has to offer as far as the Beast, Patricia, and Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. So.
No, I agree with you though. I think that's a fair point. I don't know if that's good or bad, but from a writing perspective that we are showing the worst of him, I think just to check the box of being a horror movie, it's kind of required that we show the bad of it, but it is balanced out with the fact that I don't know that we ever actually see the real Barry in this movie.
We do briefly when he's switching in front of her.
Okay, yeah.
He says, "My name is Barry."
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yes. I remember that, but it is very brief. But we get indications that at the very least we see what essentially what Barry is. And
yeah, Dennis's interpretation of Barry, which seems pretty accurate because we also see him on the videos.
Video. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see him on the video clips too. And he's clearly the one like holding everything together, which I think that in that brief moment in the multiple like the switches scene with Casey, like you do see that, like the way that he is like his immediate reaction is like he's freaking out, but he's trying to calm her down. Like he's the one holding everything together, which is indicated also through like the what we learn about him through the therapy sessions and things like that too.
Yeah, just like the couple lines of dialogue to indicate that like Barry's in charge, and we see that Barry is a pretty benign, nice personality, I think goes a long way for just like letting us interact with this person as a character and not just this crazy psychopath that we have to be afraid of, which is kind of what Psycho doesn't do this entirely because the split personality again is a reveal in that movie. You don't know until the end, but by the end, like the final shots we get of Norman Bates are him as the mother personality holding a knife trying to kill someone and then doing that like creepy face at the end. Like by the end of the movie we are shown that like every normal seeming thing about this person is a facade. They're crazy. That's what we're left with. With this, we are shown like it tells us up front this is somebody who has split personality and engages with the horror of that out the gate with like Dennis doing all the stuff that he does early on. But then we are built empathy for him throughout. And
Can you
I think
imagine
that's better.
If we check a Raimi box every episode, I bring up a superhero movie nearly every episode myself. That's kind of like what happened with I don't want to make this comparison, Hulk and Thor Ragnarok, when I think Bruce realized he wasn't on Earth anymore. He had been asleep for like 3 years and it was just the Hulk in charge. Like, can you imagine being Kevin in that moment in a basement, wondering what this strange girl is doing in front of you when you just thought you were on a bus 3 years ago, and realizing one of your other personalities captured them? Like, that moment just hits so hard because the next thing he says is just like, just kill me. Like, how can you not feel bad? Like, and who can you really blame other than his mother, obviously? Because it's still technically him in the body. Like, you're still looking at the same guy, but like, that's not who he is at his literal core. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I love James McAvoy's performance. I know we've praised it a lot, but I'll praise it again. Like, when he's Kevin, you do see, like, because we've kind of been told, like, stuff about core Kevin, and then you see that he is just kind of this guy who seems a little overwhelmed, but you can imagine that he, like, was trying to be normal and be a nice person, and is just like, oh my god, like what you were just saying. And I think another thing that helps is that, like, I actually was kind of comparing this to Inside Out as well, just in the way that, like, the personalities are all kind of there to protect Kevin. Like, they are trying to care for him. And they all go about it a different way. And I compared it to Inside Out because I feel like that's the way the emotions operate in that movie. There's so much evidence, and I didn't notice this until this rewatch. There's so much evidence of the empathy that is infused into this character, and it counts for so much.
Yeah. How do you feel about never getting a full backstory on what broke him? The fact that it's different events where the identities began splitting from the original Kevin, but we don't really, outside of Dennis, we don't know how the other personalities came about.
I think it's better because you can guess a lot about what happened, and kind of like it lets you use context clues to kind of figure things out for yourself. And if you get into too many specifics, you can get into too many inaccuracies as far as like how this condition works. You know what I mean? Like the Dennis stuff, they explained it in a specific way that to me made sense and I could follow the logic of it. But, you know, if you had to do that with all 23, right?
Like, did Barry come about because somebody made fun of the way he was dressed? He was like, no, I gotta protect Kevin. And then Barry came about? Like, I'm sorry.
And made sure he was just dripped out immaculately.
I'm going into fashion. Yep. Yeah.
Also, I do find it a little bit funny that like Barry's the fashion dude and he's wearing like the most beat up like beanie ever.
Yeah, he's
Fingerless
dressed
gloves.
almost like I kept forgetting that he was a fashion designer, and I thought he was like a street artist or something, because that's how he's dressed.
He does,
Like,
yeah. He looks like he's got like
That's
the
how he's
leather
dressed. I'm
duster
like,
and
why
everything.
does he spray paint thing? There's like an art gallery. No, but no, he's a fashion designer. I'm like, but what are you wearing? I don't understand.
Also, side note, I read this topic as how Split builds on a Psycho. And until I actually started writing my notes, I should have gotten a hint because Psycho is capitalized in your notes, Evan. And then you mentioned the movie in your first note. And only then did I realize there was never an A even in your text. So I was going in ready to do this topic thinking, okay, how we build on Kevin as a psycho. I'm not sure Evan would use that term for this guy, but okay, let's go with it.
You just assumed that I was being ableist. You assumed
Just the most
my,
offensive way possible.
Because that's
How this
always how
guy
you
is
read
just-
everything. You're just taking it as exactly.
You know,
everything I
maybe
say
if
at
you'd
first,
gone to the
so.
zoo when you were, maybe if you'd gone
Yeah.
to the zoo, you'd have more empathy. You would be a more well-rounded individual that didn't
Guys,
use offensive
cancel him. He
terminology.
just called James McAvoy an animal.
Nuh-uh, you actually called the beast an animal before.
Oh, man.
Fuck you, man. Okay, sorry to take away from the point you were making there, Jamal.
No, it's fine.
I'm also.
Just notice how could you, Evan?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about Evan and his ableism. Yeah, I already touched on the awful experience. Yeah, I'm pretty much set.
Angel, you have anything on this?
I don't know. I mean, I think I talked a little bit about it. And I agree with a lot of your points, honestly. Yeah, I think honestly, like, no, I just kind of agree, which I know is not very conducive to conversation, but
No,
again, you know,
I did that.
I'm still also on the ableism stuff, so I'm a little distracted.
I've just been trying to think of how I can work in a Green Goblin impression into this organically, just since we brought it up.
First, we attack his fashion design. Barry, why are you dressed like shit?
It can't be. Can't be. It already is. Damn it.
Don't die.
Oh, man.
Let die the beast that you love, or suffer the little shotgun.
I actually have a couple thoughts on this one. As far as does it like work as an Unbreakable sequel? So like I said at the beginning, I went into this knowing that was the case, and I was excited because I'd seen Unbreakable as a kid, and I remembered liking it. And I rewatched it somewhat recently, like this year and maybe again last year, and it was a different kind of movie than I remembered, but it was still really good. And then like I don't know, as I'm watching it, I'm like, this doesn't really feel like this is a very different movie than Unbreakable. Like tonally, Unbreakable itself feels a lot more, I guess, somber. And in this, they kind of go into the sensationalism a little more. And I think that it was still fine until Glass came out. Because then you kind of see those two things trying to overlap, and they don't. Because they're completely different things. That's one of many problems with Glass, but like it made this almost feel like slightly worse in hindsight. Like it almost, especially again, the way it's executed, there's several twists in this. There's the whole twist of like, oh, this is why he's going to spare Casey. There's also the twist of like, well, the beast is actually an amalgam of animals, which I was like, come on, fine, but like, no. Like, the zoo reveal was weird. But then, like, you get the final one where it's like Unbreakable. I'm like, is this movie going to be over soon? Like, I'm enjoying it, but also, like, you could have just made another Unbreakable movie. I don't know that this necessarily I don't think that it being an Unbreakable sequel hurt this movie, but I think that it did a disservice to both movies when they created the combined sequel, if you know what I mean. Have either of you seen Glass or no?
I have. I saw it in
Once.
theaters and don't
Yeah.
remember it very well.
Do you think it was purposeful that one guy is unbreakable, this one is broken mentally, and the other is broken physically?
Probably.
Yeah, honestly, no, I could very much
That's
see
deep,
that.
bro.
Because
Deep.
also
That's like,
M. Night Shyamalan does also like parallels, which is very clear in Unbreakable because you've got like literally that's Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass. That's his whole thing is like he is looking for the opposite of him, someone that can't be broken, whereas he is kind of constantly broken or like
yeah.
in danger of breaking. So yeah, I could honestly see that also being kind of a parallel here. And I think that the main problem with like this creating sort of a shared Unbreakable Split universe is that they don't do a lot with it once that setup is there. Like it's good setup that not a lot is done with. Like it's not built upon very well in the whole of this universe. And again, in this movie specifically, it felt very much like they were trying to add in this twist of like, look, it's an Unbreakable sequel, which I at least appreciate that they didn't bill the movie as that. That was actually a twist that nobody knew was going to happen, and they didn't get people to go see this by saying like, look, we're making Unbreakable too. You know?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know it until my dad told me at the end. I had never seen Unbreakable. I don't know if I'd even heard of it, but he
No, me neither.
recognized it.
Without it being able to be marketed that way, like how else would you go about marketing it without giving the twist away of it being 23 different personalities? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why it wasn't marketed as an Unbreakable sequel, which is why I think he's like, this'll work because it'll just get people excited for the next thing. But then the next thing was not, again, it didn't capitalize on the potential of both of these ideas. So I think it's less that this doesn't work as a sequel to Unbreakable or like a companion sequel, I guess. Like in the sense
So
of like it's not a direct.
would you say the movie was removed the G and the L? I'm just imagining it in bold print. I'm sorry, I'm a child. I'm just imagining it, the title in bold print.
First name Mr., last name X.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I don't even remember what I was gonna say now.
I'm sorry. I tend to do that.
But
I'm
it's
so
all
sorry.
yeah no. So I think it's So what I'm saying is I think it's less that this doesn't work as a sequel to Unbreakable in that like it's cool to think about like what Unbreakable set up and like okay this is a different you can see pretty much right away how this is like a different aspect of that, right? Because clearly like the Beast does have superpowers to an extent because he's climbing on walls and shit.
Taking shotgun shells
Taking
to the
shot, yeah,
shoulder.
exactly, blocking bullets, like which is crazy. So like once you get to that point, then you can see how this is a sequel to Unbreakable. Whereas like imagine if they had marketed this as a sequel right away. Unbreakable, it's a little more subtle than this, but they do establish pretty much by the end, I felt like that he does have superpowers. So if you knew that this was a sequel to that, or at least in the same world, I feel like the question of is the Beast real? Is it actually like possible to change your body chemistry in this world by having these different personalities? Like the question would not have been there from the beginning because people would have known like, oh, well, it's, it's in the same world as Unbreakable. So if you think that, Bruce Willis had superpowers in that.
Is
Yeah.
that and I know they addressed that in Glass too, but is that legit like real world? I don't know enough about DID where it's like, for example, I forget the example the doctor gave, but like the character Jade or the personality Jade within Kevin has diabetes, but the rest of the personalities don't. Like, is that based in reality?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I don't want to say yes or no because I legitimately have no idea.
Yeah, I can't help you on that either.
Like,
guys
I'm
aren't-
not.
Doctors?
Like, I've not heard anything either way, as far as
that-
like if that's accurate or not.
I thought I was talking to 2 doctors this whole time. I don't know what I'm doing here anymore.
Well, you guessed wrong. I don't think you can be a doctor if you're ableist.
One of my personalities is a doctor, but
Okay.
he's on sabbatical right now.
But he doesn't go to the zoo either.
He doesn't know. Yeah, fuck those animals. He doesn't like it either.
So I guess he's not a vet. Okay.
Nah, he only works with humans.
I was fine with this being its own thing. I didn't understand the Unbreakable tie-in because it was, like Evan, I'm not even sure it was a title I heard of at that point. I also think a lot of people in the theater were confused to see Bruce Willis at the end. But I heard one guy go, yes! And then he explained to his friend
'Cause
how
that
it's
one guy
connected
saw it.
to Unbreakable. I was like, okay, I guess I'll watch that. And within the next week or two, I remember watching it. Which I'm glad it wasn't necessary to see going into this movie.
But it was to understand what the hell Bruce Willis was doing there. Everyone's like, hey,
Right.
Bruce Willis is playing himself in this movie. That's crazy. He must be a huge fan of M. Night Shyamalan.
I think it works because it's a tag. It's like a true post-credit scene. And it does feel very MCU coded. Although if they really wanted to make it MCU coded, Sam Jackson's right there. And they didn't.
They did it. Oh, you mean for the...
Yeah.
I can't stand that line in the third where he's like, this sounds like the supervillains teaming up. That line makes me physically cringe every time I hear it. That's the only thing from the movie I remember aside from what happens to Bruce Willis's character.
Oh, that's like the fifth most cringy line. There's so many more that are so much worse.
I must have blocked them out.
Most of what I remember from that is just that, like I said, I live in Philly. I know the Philly skyline very well, and one of the plot points in that movie is that they're making a new tallest building. So the few times they show like an establishing shot of Philly, there's this big CGI building that's not there in real life. I remember that, and I remember they end the movie at 30th Street Station, and I was like, I know it. Leo pointing meme. That's most of what I remember.
Do you think they had like pretzels on set?
Probably.
Like soft pretzels?
I hope so. I hope Shyamalan has good taste in that. God damn it, now I want pretzels.
Yeah, so do I. Well, I never don't want pretzels, so...
I don't have any pretzels right now, and it's too late to get them. Ugh.
Thanks a lot, Evan.
You're the one who brought up pretzels. I don't know what you're mad at me for. I don't mind that this is an Unbreakable sequel. I do appreciate that it is not reliant on that. I kind of prefer to just see it as its own thing. I haven't rewatched either Unbreakable or Glass, but I'm pretty sure this would still be my favorite of the three. Although I remember Unbreakable being fine. It's an okay approach to like a lightly connected universe. It's like just a cool little Easter egg thing at the end. Yeah, I don't know if there's much more I have to say on it than that. I'm nonplussed by it.
What?
It's a word, nonplussed.
Just say whelmed, bro.
Alright, sure, I'm whelmed by it. If that's all we have, then we'll go to the boilerplates. So our upcoming episodes, we're going to close out our horror cycle with Angel's first pick, Drag Me to Hell.
A Raimi movie.
Alright, yep, we'll be bringing it up again, probably.
Tie-in, just doing a Raimi movie.
So it'll definitely be organic there. But I haven't seen it, so I don't know the best ones to bring in.
I wish Willem Dafoe was one of the ghosts.
Or Bruce Campbell, maybe he'll be one. You know?
Maybe.
Or Tobey Maguire. Bully Maguire being one of the ghosts. Like, what if he was like the hag or something?
That would be so
Yeah.
cool. That would.
Or the train.
I already love the movie. That would make the movie twice as good.
Your spiritual apparitions are fake.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your third eye.
You want to go to heaven? Get religion.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Your trash
Can you close
protagonist,
this out?
lady.
No. Close this out. I don't want no more
Okay,
of this.
so after Drag Me to Hell, I didn't even get to the second episode we're going to do after that. We decided we're going to do Snowpiercer as Jelani's next pick. And, well, I guess since both of those are there, my next is going to be Interstellar for the 10th anniversary.
Oh, nice. I've never seen it. I've been wanting to see it.
I'll be curious,
never
because
saw
I
it.
think you might like it.
Yeah. It's a good
Nolan,
time.
Right? Nolan,
Yeah,
McConaughey. Who else is in it?
Anne
Hathaway.
Hathaway, Michael Caine, and Jessica Chastain.
I was about to say
And
Woody Harrelson because I was thinking of Matthew McConaughey, but I'm like, that's not correct.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in it.
And also Timothy Chalamet before he was big. That was like one of his first ones.
Did you know he's been offer only for like 7 years? That's insane.
That upsets me.
But he's also a
much.
nepo baby. So
Oh, who?
I forget who, but like his uncle's
That
the
explains
director,
so much
and
about him. So
his
much.
another one of his family members is like a producer.
Oh, so it might not be like a name that we know. It's just like he's in the industry.
Yeah, he's been a lock for a while.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I mean, his sister also acts. I know that.
Didn't know that. Didn't know he had one.
Yeah, I only found. I think she's on that show, Sex Lives of College Girls. That one on Max. I've only seen like 3 episodes. It's okay.
Is it safe for work? That doesn't sound safe for work.
I don't think so.
That sounds like a different type of site. Is
it's not
Max
that.
spelled with? Is it spelled with 3 X's?
No. I've heard of it. I haven't seen it or know anything about it, but I know it's just.
It's like I think it's a Mindy Kaling show, or it's like Mindy Kaling produced at least.
I'll take
I'm
your
not
word
gonna say
for it.
anything to that. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know. Yeah, as far as I knew, that was the only person in his family that was in the industry. I didn't know that he was a nepo baby, but again, that explains so much.
It would explain a lot.
Watch the
If you
Penguin.
guys, viewers, if you haven't guessed, I'm not a fan of Timothy Chalamet. I don't hate him necessarily. I think he's got like 2 good movies in there. I just don't like him very much as far as like the hype goes. You know, nothing against him as a person. I have yet to be sold on him.
I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts, but maybe we'll
Right
get
on.
into that if we cover another Chalamet.
Wonka.
Wonka. I mean, we've done the other 2 Willy Wonkas, and that didn't exist yet.
Oh yeah.
I do think
That'd be
I
a
think
reason for me to watch Wonka. I would do that.
Yeah, I haven't seen him. I think the rest of my family, or at least a lot of them, went to see it in theaters, and I just wasn't with them. And it's one of those things where a lot of times that'll happen and be like, "Oh, you should," and I'm like, "Should I really?" Because I have better taste than all of you. So
I do that with my family too. My brother knows my taste the best, but
yeah,
my mom is
same for me.
mom
My
is
brother
pretty good.
knows if I'll like something, but sometimes my parents will be like, yeah. So how about?" And then I'll look it up on Letterboxd, and I'm like, they'll be like, "You should do this on the podcast," and I'm like, noted. But I think we're gonna stick with In Time instead.
Dude. Oh, we
Yeah.
gotta do that too.
Someday I'm gonna
Someday.
make us do In Time. I don't know.
At some point.
I
In
would love
Time.
to do In Time.
when.
In Time is so good.
Some point. Just in time, Burley.
Yeah.
I actually really like Justin Timberlake as a performer. I don't know why him
He's so good
specifically,
in that
but
movie.
I would love to talk about him in relation to like other roles he's been in because he's
That's
not
the only
somebody
one
I
I know him
expected to
for.
like as much as I do.
Yeah. Between
What
that
else
and The
has he been
Social
in?
Network.
He was in that?
Yeah.
In The Social Network, yeah, he plays Sean Parker,
I don't know who that is. I haven't
the guy
seen
who
the
founded
shows.
Napster.
I don't know how long I want to wait on The Social Network because I know I say this all the time. I really hope you love that, Jelani.
I do too.
I think it could be. I don't know if it could
I
become a
think you
top
will.
10 for you, but like, it could be a whiplash. Like it could
I
be
love-
one that's like a little out of your
love
wheelhouse, but
Whiplash.
because it's just so good, like
I think Whiplash is in my top 10 all time. I love Whiplash so much.
I don't know if I would say Social Network is a better movie. I don't know that Social Network is going to top Whiplash in your book.
Does it have J.K. Simmons? Does that automatically boost it?
Unfortunately, no. Although I would like to
No.
see J.K. Simmons be a Sorkin character. I think he could be a fun Sorkin character.
That'd be pretty good.
He's got the chops.
Oh man, there's a lot of good people in that movie though. Like,
Mhm.
I really like being pleasantly surprised seeing him and Clancy Brown in any role in whatever I'm watching. Clancy Brown's... I mentioned him. Guys, watch The Penguin. If you watch The
Yeah.
Batman, watch The Penguin. Evan, I'm telling
Penguin's
you to watch
so
it.
good.
We might not do we're probably not going to do an episode on it, but it's
I have been hearing good things.
good, man. Like, just performances and writing alone are just...
Maybe I'll have to try it.
Or you will.
Mayhaps. To finish out the boilerplate, we have our YouTube channel. I just put up a new kind of video where I rank all the gritty fairy tale movies from 12 to 1. And there will be a little bit more stuff like that coming in the near and far future. We have our Discord server that you can join for free. And we have our Patreon that you can join for $1 a month. We are planning a watch-along on Shark Tale soon. That hopefully will be happening in the next month or so, which is sure to be a good time. Yeah, get there in time for that. And otherwise, I'm going to start making sure I keep saying this. Like, share, subscribe, and give us ratings and reviews if you want on Spotify. I'm on Letterboxd at ev_wes, and where are you guys at?
I'm on Instagram at Jelani T. Kelly, YouTube Jelani T. Kelly, and I can also be found not in Philly and not at the zoo like Evan.
I can be found in Philly, but not at the zoo. I'm at the disc golf course across the river.
Yeah, if you're looking
I can
for
be
Evan,
found there quite a bit.
the last place you want to look is the zoo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at AngelsArc. Yep, at AngelsArc15. I'm also on Letterboxd at Serenity Cinema, and I live at the zoo. So, you know, any zoo you go to, I'm probably there.
All the zoo.
All the zoos. But it's a different exhibit every time, so you do have to look for me.
I'm just imagining you as, like, as different animals. Now I'm imagining you, like, as a giraffe. You just have a long neck.
I
And I'm imagining you as a...
I thought you were gonna say like hanging out with different animals.
No.
And so, but now I'm imagining like me painted like a tiger,
Tiger,
or me
yeah,
as a
you got the
giraffe, or me as a bear.
Now you got now there's the version of you that has the mane, and you all just have the same straight face. You're just like.
But I'm the cartooniest version of each one. So like if I'm a bear, I'm Yogi Bear, and I'm talking about picnic baskets.
Yeah. There you
See,
go.
I'm imagining it more as a Where's Waldo, where like...
Which exhibit is going to be Angel at this zoo?
It's like in the old Bigfoot photograph, but I'm just like in the corner going like this.
Somebody made... Actually, no, because I don't want to endorse AI art. Somebody make some Where's Waldo.
Please don't. Yeah, no. Somebody make regular art of that, please.
Okay. We'll see you guys next time.